Welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. Hello, this is Adam Huss coming to you from Los Angeles. Thanks for listening. My guest for this episode is Zaitouna Kusto. Zaitouna is the Managing Sommelier at Esters Wine Shop in Santa Monica, California. Zaitouna exemplifies what I think are some of the best qualities in wine sales. Someone who listens carefully and doesn't impose their own preferences and judgments on what others want. This has led Zaitouna to have some unique and interesting perspectives and observations on wine, and I think this conversation will give everyone something to think about, react against, and be both challenged and entertained by. I always enjoy talking with Zaitouna, which should be apparent from this interview, and I hope you'll be as charmed and delighted as I clearly was. Enjoy! Zaitouna, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. It's been great getting to know you, and I wanted to talk to you because I think you have a really interesting perspective on the wine industry. Can you
Thanks.
can you tell a little bit about yourself? Like, where'd you come from, and where are you now?
So, yeah, I have a bit of a long and kind of an interesting background with this industry. So, my father's side of the family, my grandfather's name was Tom Feeney, and he was a grower in Santa Rosa. Um, and we sold to Deloach and Sonoma-Cutrer, Williams-Sonoma, Gergich Hills, bunch of big houses in
Sure.
Sonoma County in the 90s. And that was just a part of my kind of upbringing, just spending my summers at my dad's house because my mom lived down in Southern California. So I grew up down here, but I would go up to my dad's, a couple times a year and then spend the whole summer up there. And as a part of like earning my keep, as it were, I'd have to work in the vineyards every summer, and which a lot of people, when they hear that about me, they think, "Oh, that's so cool! You got to do this like really amazing thing." And I'm like, "Let me tell you something.
It's like
When you're
child
when you're
labor.
12 years old, like hoeing weeds in the hot sun and like tying baby vines, all day on 500 acres, it's just, and you're not like fast enough to like keep up with the actual workers. So they put you on special projects that, you're doing by yourself. So there's no camaraderie. There's just, you're just
Right,
alone.
right.
I'm just like sitting there with my like CD player and, trying to just pass the day as quickly as I can, listening to like whatever I'm listening to when I'm like 14. And, it wasn't fun. And
Yeah.
so I didn't really
It's
have any
funny.
love for it. Oh, go
Just
ahead.
as a side, I heard a farmer once cautioned other farmers by saying that I overheard, and they were like, never deceive yourself into thinking that farming is romantic. He's like, let your customers believe it's as romantic as the day is long, but you should never be confused that it is romantic. But yeah,
Yeah,
good.
not at
So,
all.
but
But I
you,
did get to learn how to drive a tractor. I learned how to like arc weld. There was some fun things. And when I got a little bit older, I took on more of like an apprenticeship type role, and I actually like learned things. Wasn't just doing manual labor. So that was pretty cool. But then I was like 16 or 17 or something, and I had my driver's license suspended for one reason or another. And my dad was driving me to school one day, and he just asks me, "Do you think you'll want to carry on the family business one day?" And of course, I'm 17 or 16, and all I care about is, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and
sure.
I don't want to be a farmer. So I'm like, no, I don't want to carry on the family business. I have no desire to be a farmer or anything like that. So he sold everything. So my family like no longer does any of that. Plus my dad doesn't drink, and it was really his dad's sort of thing. So it wasn't really a passion for him. And then I moved
So
to New York when I was 18. to pursue acting. And while I was out there, I had just a bunch of side jobs working in bars. I got a bartending job when I was 18, and then I moved to Queens and got a job at a Korean liquor store that was below the apartment I lived in, and kind of worked my way up from like the basement and the cellar there and to the sales floor, and sort of just over the years, worked my way up into management positions in different wine shops and restaurants, and we now joined a couple blind tasting groups and did that pretty religiously for a long time. And now I live in LA, so kind of back to near where I grew up, and I grew up in Orange County predominantly, and I'm now the managing sommelier at Esters Wine Shop and Bar in Santa Monica, which is a really prestigious wine bar with a really extensive Burgundy cellar list, and I manage the whole wine list there, and I act as a floor somm and do all sorts of stuff, and it's been kind of an interesting full circle for me.
And you're like now at the point in your life where you're wishing you'd said yes to your dad back then, back in the
Yeah,
day.
but I don't know if I'd want to live in Santa Rosa, but
Right.
I'd be kind
Yeah.
of have to be married to that place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's
Well,
a part of me that wants to be a farmer now. Like, I
it's
after
definitely
spending so long in cities, I'm getting a little burnt out on city life.
well, it's definitely like a note to any parent who has, a family business. Like, don't take your kids seriously. Don't ask them a serious question at age 17. You know what they're thinking about. It's not the family business. Like,
No.
but that's great. It sounds like they were pretty cool and just getting you out in the field and not treating you with kid gloves, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I
They
mean, in retro, I really resented my dad for it for a long time, but in retrospect, it helped me a lot. Like, I mean, even getting some of those first jobs I had, I was able to kind of use that as like a cudgel to just work my way in, be like, oh, well, I might not have any experience, but I actually grew up on a vineyard. So you'd be a fool not to hire me. So
it's in my blood. I
wine's
love
in my blood. I've literally used that cliche line in like job cover letters, a long time ago. So it
So why?
worked.
So why what was the family's interest in wine and I mean how did that come down through the years? Like how did they end up as farmers up in Santa Rosa?
My grandfather just fell in love with it. I think. I mean, he was. I mean, he started off doing insurance, but I think he bought at. I think he bought back in like the 70s or 80s at a really good time, and
Mm.
he just, he was a big wine lover, and loved Zinfandel and Pinot, and we had these amazing like 100-year-old Zin plants on our front yard, like those head
Oh wow.
trained, just
Yeah.
tree trunk, gorgeous plants that have super low yields.
Oh,
And I remember just going out as a kid and just eating the berries, in October and stuff like that. And I have like a bit of a fondness for that sort of stuff at this point.
just the now the what part of that?
Just like like you live in LA, so it's
Yeah.
it's not like you're surrounded by nature. Although I've been trying to get into some urban foraging as much as I can, marking on a little map like where the loquat trees are and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like there's something really, like you said, like romantic and just cool about this agricultural product that you are cultivating, and it's growing right in your front yard, and then it's ending up in people's wine glasses. It was pretty interesting experience for me.
That's awesome. Well, you have to come visit our place, by the way, which um, I don't know if I've told you about it, but we have we have that going on here. So you got to come.
Yeah, you said you have some vines in the front yard, right?
Yeah, and the whole yard is we're surrounded by sort of. I mean, we've turned the whole thing into a permaculture food and wine garden, basically. So it's like there's over, I don't know, like there's a couple dozen different fruiting things, trees and cacti and vines and all kinds of stuff like that, and then gardens and herbs and sugar cane. It's like the whole thing is edible basically.
I love
And
that.
chickens, and we've had bees. We don't have bees currently, but we're waiting for some to move back in. It's a bad time for bees with drought. They know when the drought's here, and they don't replicate, they don't reproduce as much, so there aren't as
Yeah.
many wild hives out there. But yeah, you got to come and
I'd love to. I love that philosophy too. I love the idea of like guerrilla gardening and just turning like every little piece of like a like a sidewalk or in between streets and stuff into edible.
yes,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a pretty like revolutionary approach to a lot of things from
yeah.
what I little I know. And I want to get into that. You're so Esters is part of the Rustic Canyon group, right? Is
Yes, it
that
is.
correct?
Yes.
Right? Which is a really great group. I mean, the food is great, the wine is great, the values seem to be great. Um, can you talk a little bit about what you guys do there in the shop?
Yeah. So it's funny because we sort of just changed our cuisine quite a bit. We have a new chef. So the food now is much more French leaning, California, Santa Monica food, farmers market.
Great.
And before it was a little bit more eclectic, and now the menu is a little more focused and fine tuned. And I really like our new menu. Now, the Rustic Canyon group itself is all very farm to table, farmers market, Santa Monica local driven in general, um, which I think is something really important. They're very big on
Yeah.
supporting organic farming. Everything that we bring in at Esters for wine is organic at the minimum. We try to have things that are biodynamic, natural, dry farmed. We carry some of your wines, as you know.
Yay.
We love your stuff, and
Yay. Double
you know,
yay.
uh, we have a lot of, I would say, I mean, if you're out on our shelves, it's a pretty eclectic mix. It does lean pretty heavily old world with a good amount of like kind of new wave, like, you know, California stuff as well. But then half of our wine list is in the cellar, and that's mostly Burgundy. Like, we're a huge Burgundy shop. And
Awesome.
it's a cool model because we're not just a restaurant and a bar, but we're also a retail shop. So you can, anything that you taste by the glass, you can buy a bottle of by the, take home. So
Yeah.
and for me living in New York for so long, that's not something you can do there. And so that concept was really appealing to me, especially having worked in retail and restaurants. It was a really nice marriage of the two.
That's great. Well, I mean, I can attest that the selection is awesome. The food is really good, and part of the moment that I decided I really wanted to interview you. I mean, because we've known each other a little while now, and I
Right.
obviously like you, and we get along, but it was, we brought friends in to eat and drink, and you asked, you're basically taking our wine orders, what we want to drink. And my friend said, he was like, I'll have, like he treated it like he was in a typical place. He was like, I'll have your Chardonnay or whatever, like didn't even look at the menu, kind of thing. I mean, and that's, I'm not criticizing him at all for that. It was just,
Hmm.
that's where he didn't know anything about esters. I invited him there. He didn't know, and you like gave a really good answer where you sort of like were like, oh, okay, we have two, and you asked him some really good questions and listened to him really well, and identified like what he would like in a really nice way, like, and he was absolutely happy with what you suggested. And I just thought that kind of approach to service is unfortunately somewhat rare in wine.
Yeah, I
Maybe
agree.
and it was you were meeting him where he was. Basically, he was just like, and that's all you cared about. Like, you weren't trying to, you know, challenge him, or even, worse than that, judge him, or, trying to make him feel like he should be ordering something else, or that your selection was like, we something that wasn't just Chardonnay, or what, like, so there's so many ways you could have reacted, and you didn't. Like, you just were like, it was, yeah, it was really lovely. I'm sure he wasn't even aware of it, and I think that was also what was beautiful about the interaction, that how you just sort of met him where he was, and that was great. So that's a big compliment to you, and I
Thank
think I
you.
wanted to ask about where that came from. Like, how did that develop in your approach to customer service?
I mean, part of it's that I've just been doing it a long time, and I spent a lot of, I just spent a lot of time talking to different people. But I think there is like, um, it's like a Rosetta Stone when you talk to people about
Mm,
wine. Yeah, because not
right,
everyone has like the lexicon that people in the industry have to express what they like.
right.
So part of your job as a som is like to learn to
Interpret.
understand what people are trying to tell you.
Right.
When people give you conflicting things, like people will be like, I want a full-bodied Pinot Noir or something like that,
Right,
or
right, right. Yeah.
but
Or
yeah, but
really,
you know what I mean. Like
yeah,
people will say things that like kind of would make your head scratch, and your job's not to correct them. It's to be like, they're not wrong in what they're looking for. You just have to like find. It's like, you have to find the Rosetta Stone. You have to find the language that they're. You have to come to their level where they're coming from. Otherwise, you're going to alienate them. And I have a big problem with like the wine industry being, kind of gate kept and exclusionary. And I don't want it to be like that. I don't want anyone to ever feel judged, or that they don't deserve good wine because they don't know, you know, who Dennis Bachelet is or something. I just like don't like, I don't care that they aren't like, master somms. Like I want people to have good wine, because the more people drink good wine, more good wine will be made. You know, like
yeah.
the more people are drinking stuff like that you're producing, the less yellowtail and barefoot will be, being pumped out.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, the gatekeeping thing is now something you brought up twice. Have you experienced that in your own career or in your own life, with the wine industry?
I mean, not to me directly, but I
Oh,
mean, I
that's good.
see it all the time.
Yeah.
I see people like when I go out, and how people talk to other people about wine. I mean, people don't, when I go out and purchase wine for myself, or, it doesn't really happen to me, but I see it all the time, like the way people judge. And I mean, you see reflexive reactions too about how customers order wine and how they don't want to be judged. So people have learned what they think are the insider tips, where they're like, I want a dry wine. It's not sweet, right? Things like that.
Right.
Oh, I want a natural wine. Where they think they have like a piece of inside information because they don't want to be perceived as like ignorant. Because I think there's a status thing about wine in general. And if you know about wine, it says something about you. And I just don't like the idea that people need to feel like they have to give me these qualifiers to get something tasty.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, there's so many ways we could talk about that. But I know that you, in particular, have brought up to me this really becomes noticeable to you, all of these things that you just mentioned, when it comes to off dry wines.
Oh
You
my
want
god.
to what's the deal with off dry wines?
People hate off dry wines, and for not the reasons that they think. And
Right.
this is my thesis. So this is my, and maybe it's not that hot of a take. Maybe it is a hot take, but I think that most people's distaste for off dry wines, when people come in, I swear to God, I get the question like 5 times a day. It's not sweet, right? It's not sweet, right? Give me your driest white. Which like is what does that mean? Like I don't even like how do you answer that? But which is what I was talking about earlier, where it's like you have to kind of like, what are they
Right.
really asking for? And you kind of have to just ignore that and get to the root of what they're really looking for. But anyway, I think it comes from a lot of different things, but mostly it's that I think there's an association with off dry wines being seen as cheap.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a racial component to it, I think, because people think of off dry wines, they think of like Moscato and stuff like that. And that's predominantly associated with like people of color in like hip hop videos in the 90s. And I think that's a huge reason why like middle class white people who drink wine don't want to drink things that are off dry, even though the wine it might be really delicious, like a nice like fine herb Riesling,
Yeah.
uh, which is like what I love to drink all the time. Um, but they won't touch it because to them that's the same thing as drinking what you know uh, someone in a hip hop video is drinking, or I mean, and it's subconscious. And I also think there's a misogynist element to it too, where it's like sweet things or fruity things, where it's like, oh, I don't want like a fruity drink. I want something real earthy and like, I
Mm.
want something that just tastes like dirt and rocks. I don't want no frilly drink. Like, I think that's like
Like
a legitimate thing. Like, I think people don't
like
want
it's like code for saying I don't want a girly drink.
it's a
I
code
think.
for saying I don't want a girly drink. And then, you
Interesting.
get,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just, yeah, it's very much, I think, a sociological reason why people have an aversion to off dry wines, and not because they actually don't like the taste of them. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think you could really, you could blind taste people on Peter Lauer Barrel X Riesling every day, and 99 out of 100 people would say it's delicious. And then if you told them that it's an off dry wine, they would be shocked.
Right, right. Yeah, and meanwhile, every like both sales stats as well as everything stats show that at least American consumers, number one, love lots of residual sugar in their quote unquote dry wines, and prefer actually, like out of the context of judgment in a wine buying atmosphere, prefer off dry wines, like prefer a wine with a little sweetness to it. Like, I
Right. But
mean,
they just
you
don't
look
want to be known that they do.
right, exactly. That's wow. Yeah, that is revealing.
They don't want to because it's seen as like lower class. It's like embarrassing for them. People see it as embarrassing, and I see it all the time. It's like this, like it's not sweet, right? It's like a pearl clutching moment. Like they're it's like they're really there's like this real like you don't judge me. I don't drink that stuff. I drink good wines. I drink dry wines. So I know what I'm
Right.
talking about. And because you're a wine professional, you'll respect me because I know the word dry. Like it's
Right.
like I respect you so much less because you said that.
Well, this can be very liberating for those of us who might get a stuck fermentation. Now we'll just be like, you know what? Zaitouna said we should just bottle it like this.
Do
Like it's
it.
gonna be, yeah, I love it.
Just don't tell anyone.
Right, exactly. It was a dry attempted wine. How about that?
Yeah.
um, just didn't quite get there. I love that. um, but you have you have some other thoughts. What are some things that you care deeply about in wine now, right now?
Sure. I mean, things that have been on my mind lately are like, okay, people are drinking too much orange wine. I'm just really tired of it. Um,
So
People don't know what natural wine is, and uh, I'm
what do you mean
just
by
because
that?
just people just
Like
don't know what the word natural wine means.
like the average natural wine, like the average person who comes in and asks for it doesn't really
yes, they
know
just think it
why they're
means a
asking
wine
for
that's
it.
not going to give them a hangover.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Oh, natural wine that doesn't give you hangovers, right? Like that's I get that
You've heard
question
that
all the
for
time.
real?
Oh my
Really?
god, every day.
Wow. Do
Yeah,
people
every
do
every
people
day.
ever get technical about it? Like do you ever get the question of like how many parts per million SO2 does it have? I mean,
No, no one's talking to me
okay.
about native yeasts.
Really? Okay. That
No.
okay. So it's more
It's
like a category that has a reputation that they think is desirable for something that's completely unrelated to why that category was created in reality.
yes, because it's become a trend, and
Oh,
it's like I
amazing.
don't it's like I don't and I don't think it's like inherently bad or good, because on the positive side of it, I do think it's created a lot of new wine drinkers. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people who probably were beer drinkers, um, or otherwise drink other things, have now, kind of started getting into wine, and natural wine is a good entry point, because it's, doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money, um, and it's approachable. It's glue, and you know, uh, I also think the flip side is that a lot of what we call natural wine is flawed and gets passed off as good wine, and we'll have just like volatile acidity or mousiness, and uh, like I don't like that. That's becoming like kind of an industry standard for what natural wine is. Like natural wine's supposed to have a taste, like rather than like that's what I mean. Where it's like natural wine is becoming like a style of wine rather than a process of winemaking.
right.
And it has to come in a clear bottle, and have no foil around the top, or be like it's just there's just like all these things that I mean, you
Yeah.
see it with like a lot of big names in natural wine who I'm not going to name, and I just think it's getting a little repetitive.
Mm. And I'm guessing, this is the way of any trend, and that there's probably like, uh, a spec like a there's a bell curve to the interest that will be paid to that. Like we're probably peaking right now, or close to peaking, and then there's going to be a downside. I'm guessing, just naturally. That's my guess. I don't know. Do you have a thought, or do you think this is an ongoing?
I
Will
think we
we
got at least another year of it.
will we be? Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, when I say peaking, I mean I could even see it going longer than that. But yeah, maybe, year to five.
Yeah.
But do you think, I mean, or do you so maybe this is a better question. Do you think that the generation, because I feel like it's a bit generational, or I don't know, like maybe that's a better question. Is it generational from the people that are coming in and buying it at Esters? Do you see a single generation predominantly buying it, or is it cross generational?
It definitely leans more young.
Yeah, that was
That
my guess.
doesn't mean that there aren't people who are older drinking natural wine, but it definitely skews young.
Are you seeing people being converted like wholeheartedly, or you see people who are coming in and have heard about it, want to try it, and they're like, oh, okay, and then they go back to their normal habits? Or are you seeing, okay, so these are like, I'm giving you multiple options. Like maybe this is C now, is like maybe a whole generation is being converted to this sort of style, and they're going to be
Yeah.
acclimated to things like VA and mouse, and those aren't going to bother them at all, and so they're going to continue that kind of wine consumption the rest of their life.
Yes, and I really hope that's not the case, to be honest. But I think that there is a large contingency of people who are natural wine drinkers, in the same way that there are people who are just beer drinkers or like whiskey drinkers. Like
Oh, wow. Okay.
that's what they drink.
Yeah. I mean,
There are people who are converts, and there are people who will be like, I like natural wine, but I'll also drink something classic, which is like that's like my favorite type of customer. Like I enjoy natural wine too. I drink natural
yeah.
wine. Like
Yeah.
I have some, but like I'm also not gonna not drink like Michel Lafarge or some other super nice Burgundy or a grower champagne or something. I think it's just dogmatic and closed minded,
You mean
and
you will drink all of that?
I'll drink everything.
Yeah,
I'll drink
it's me
anything that's
too.
well made. I'll drink
Yeah,
anything that's, and I don't think a wine has to be natural to be well made.
yeah. Okay. Do you want to expound at all on that?
I mean, I just think that, I don't think it's required to have, and when I say to be natural, I don't mean like I prefer wines to be made without pesticides and to be made hand harvested and, you know, with better farming practices. Don't get me wrong. But that doesn't mean that you can't, like, some of the best Rieslings in Mosel are not made organically, and some of the best
Mhm.
champagnes are not made organically. They just can't do it. And I mean, some are, and there are great ones that are. But I just, like, I'm not gonna not drink it because they're not following a narrow definition. And I don't think that at the end of the day, what matters to me is the product that they're putting out there, and that matters more. I mean, I care more about. Okay, I like to use Stoltman as an example.
Yeah,
Stoltman Winery in Santa
great
Barbara.
example. Yeah,
Um, they make natural wine, but that's the thing I care the least about them. They make
yeah,
natural wine and do all that, but they also have like the best labor practices of like any winery I know of, and that's stuff I care more about. And the wine tastes good. So if they weren't natural, but we're still putting out wine that tastes like it does, and they're paying their workers salary year round and giving them full health benefits, to me that's more of a success than you know most natural wineries.
and they also do. I mean, they're natural. They have a natural line, I should say, but they also have a more sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a traditional or a
Traditional,
classic,
yeah.
yeah, like a more traditional line of wines as well. That that has was their bread and butter before they sort of
Right.
embraced natural wines with that other line, like the Levy Bunches wine and every
Hmm.
that line of things. Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, I think they're also farming pretty darn well as well. At least they've started to more recently.
Yeah, they do a lot
They,
of dry farming, and
yeah,
yeah.
and organic farming and everything aligned with that as well. Where do you see wine headed right now? Do you see any other trends just from working with the public, and do you see things that are being asked for that aren't out there yet?
Well, aside from the orange wine trend, which right now is obviously the huge thing, um, I think Piquette is going to be a big thing that comes
It's
along.
it's sort of like White Claw in a bottle, isn't it? I
Yeah,
mean,
and like just like low ABV stuff in general, like
yeah,
verjus, and I
yeah,
think that's going to be kind of a thing that's going to be start becoming more available when it gets dialed in and people start making it good. You know,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
I've
I mean,
yet
it's
to had a Piquette that is convincingly great, to be honest. But I think it's only a matter
well,
of time until someone cracks the code. So
right, but I mean, maybe great isn't what it's there for. It was never
yeah,
meant to be
true.
great, right? Like it's meant to be the Bud Light of wines. It's like, I mean, it really
Yeah,
is like the White Claw. It's like the party. Like it's just the water at the wine party. Like, yeah, we've got a seltzer. It's got a little alcohol in it. Here, have
yeah,
it on ice. Um, just that sort of refreshing thing. That's a nice, fun beverage. Nothing, no thought needed, basically.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, go on. Sorry, I,
Well,
I'll inter.
yeah. I mean, I think that's probably going to be some of the next stuff to catch on. Um, I would like to see people, and I try to encourage people, especially people who are into like who are new to wine, and a lot of people who are new to wine are into natural wines, is what I've found, and I try to
Nice. Hmm.
give them, a balanced perspective and be like, I think it's great to like that stuff, but I think you should also try something classic too. I would just say don't have a closed mind. So I wouldn't mind seeing a revival in classic either. To be honest, that's the stuff I really love. The stuff I learned about first, and will that become a trend again? I don't know. Probably not, but I can
Well, I
dream.
mean, you do have I mean, I think there is this middle ground, and I mean, people like the most obvious for me is somebody like Steve Mathiasen, who was never a score chaser, even though he grows grapes that go into 100-point Cabernets from Napa. The way he makes his wine will never get 100 points. Like he's just not chasing those scores. But so it's that quality of farming, and he farms organically, but he's also not a natural winemaker. I mean, I don't think anybody would accuse him of that. Like, it's his wines are technically perfect, and I mean that in the best way. I don't mean like in a purist sense, but I just mean he like ensures that they go into the bottle stable and without flaws, without
Right,
detectable notes
right.
of things. And and I think there's other people like him as well. But his alcohols, like on Napa cabs, are 13%, and that's just unheard of today. But like, we have the natural wine pendulum sort of swinging the consuming public way out beyond that, to like 11% Napa cabs.
Yeah,
If anybody was making wine from Napa cab as a natural wine like that. Um, and I think at the end of the day, like, it might swing back, and Steve will still be standing, and be the stronger for it, because it's that sort of just a classic style that it's the and Steve, I use him as a just a metaphor for everyone who's doing that, sort of taking that middle path, because you like you said, I mean, I think on the one end everything tastes the same, and on the other end everything tastes the same. Like, it either tastes like an oak barrel and super extracted juice, or it tastes like VA and mouse, and
yeah,
or like kombucha, um on the other end. And then in the middle you have, like, a window into terroir. Like, you have this beautiful like a transparent wine, in the sense, not transparent visually, but transparent in the sense that you can see all the way back to its place of origin,
yeah.
and it's a unique, delicious thing that you just has these depths of layers that you can learn about and feel connected to a real life, like, place. I don't know, that's not the most elegant way to express that, but
No, I know what
um
you mean.
yeah, as opposed to the other ends of the spectrum. And I don't know, so yeah, I'm throwing that out there as maybe that will happen. I don't know, do you see that happening?
I think that would be nice. I mean, it's the thing is,
Sounds
it's
like
out of my control. You
yeah.
know,
What do you look
I
for in wine? I mean, you said Riesling. You're drinking a lot of Riesling. What is it that you like about that? Like, what appeals to you? Why are you in love with that?
complexity. They're easy to drink at the same time. like
Easy
like they're
drinking
easy to drink, but they
complexity.
make you think.
Yeah.
Like they're I don't know. There's something about Riesling that is just ephemeral and beautiful, and no two are quite alike. And they're just challenging and simple at the same time. Like they're awesome. But what I look for in wine is I like wines to be, you know, intentionally crafted like that. So I don't want a wine just to be grapes that are just crushed and thrown in a bottle. Like I want there to be some thought behind it. I think of it as, it needs to be like I'm not into abstract expressionism as a form of art, and I
Hmm.
don't like my wine to look like a Jackson Pollock. I want it to be. It can be abstract, but in the way that like Picasso is abstract. Like it needs to have composition, and I want a wine to have balance and structure, and is it like it needs to have a point? Like, is this wine supposed to be acidic? Is it supposed to be tannic? Is it supposed to be creamy? Is it supposed to be plummy? Whatever, and not just random. I just don't like inarticulate wine.
Hmm.
I like wine that has a purpose and a point and a good story. I always appreciate a good story. You know, like I'm very intrigued by winemakers with cool backgrounds, and you know, I mean, that's part of what I love about you guys. I always love to recommend you guys. I just think it's awesome that you make wine in LA. And you know, and I think your wine is thoughtful. Like I just think wine should be thoughtful and it shouldn't just be, because then it just, even if it's, because then if it's natural wine and people are just making it to make it, then it just seems like it's just they're making it to make a buck. Like, and then how is it any different than Yellowtail? You know,
Mm.
if they're just throwing it in a bottle to see and seeing what happens. I, at the end of the day, then it's just, is it just about the production and just getting the bottles out there? Like it, that just feels cheap to me.
Yeah, I I hear that. Um, yeah, I have that. The way you started to describe the wine that you like, it kind of reminds me of like when you meet somebody who's kind of quiet and unassuming. You know, maybe just like a very reserved personality. And then they make a comment that's really like wicked funny, and you're just like, wait a minute, like there's something going on here. And then you ask them a question, and their answer is really thoughtful, and now you're just like, okay, now I want to get to know you, like there's clearly hidden depths here. And I that sort of easy drinking complexity is what made me think of that, where you take a sip of wine, you're like, oh, this is delicious, you know, it's like nice, it just goes down easy. And then take another sip and you're like, wait a minute, like this is better, like this feels, there's something going on here. Like that kind of
Yeah, it's like you can think about it if you want to, but you don't have to. You can
right,
just
right.
enjoy it and just, you know, it's a sensory experience. Or you can analyze the hell out of it and it can continue to riddle you and tease you and be an adventure. You know, that's what I like.
Now, did you? This is kind of a random question. Did you have any? Did you have to do any formal training, certification? Have you done any of that, like
I have
WSET
not
or?
actually up until this point, but I actually today just signed up and I just had to test into WSET level 3 because I didn't do levels 1 and 2, so I had to take a test to see if I could be in level 3. So, and I passed, and I'm starting my WSET 3 this summer.
Where do you see yourself heading? What's next for you? What's happening in your life right now?
You know, eventually, it's, I mean, it's so wide open. I don't know. There's definitely, like I said, a part of me that loves the idea of making wine, um, and working with the land and being maybe less face to face with people, um, or face to face with people in a different way. Um, and maybe that's the direction I'll head with my career at some point, but I don't know if that's going to happen anytime in the near future. Just, but it's definitely something that I think about and kind of romanticize about. But you know, I also don't want to leave the city or anything like that, and at least not anytime soon. But you know, it's kind of like, oh, it'd be cool to have a small little winery and tasting room in, you know, Willamette Valley or something.
Let me ask you a controversial question. Is
Okay.
Pinot Noir really that interesting?
um, I think it is. I think it's a very malleable grape.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's the most interesting grape, but I think it is very interesting. It's certainly probably one of the most interesting red wine varietals, though. I think it has the cachet and hype for a reason. I get
Uh-huh.
it.
It's not just
I don't.
sideways.
It's not just sideways. I do think that movie was unfairly damaging to Merlot, which I think is a fine
Yeah.
varietal. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean,
but
look, if I can go off on a small little artistic tangent, it
please,
the you know, yes, Miles disparaged Merlot, right? But the wine, the central wine, the like 64 Cheval Blanc is a 50-50 blend of the two grapes that he disparaged in the movie, Cab Franc and Merlot. And there's this element, and it's his most precious possession, which he like, when he finally guzzles it within an out at the end out of a styrofoam cup or whatever,
yeah,
it sort of shows his transformation. and his growth as a person, we hope, maybe, if there is any growth for him,
Yeah.
is letting go of some of that pretense and letting go of the some of the things that hold him back. And it's funny that, I mean, in a lot of ways it was used really effectively as a metaphor, if you understand anything about wine, because clearly these two things that represent him so closely and that he holds so near and dear to his heart are the things that he disparages. So there's obviously, he's a self-loathing character.
Yeah, self-loathing.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and so that, but these metaphors of film, which were used really effectively, just became translated literally to the viewing public, and Pinot became king, and Merlot, like, literally, like 40% of California's vineyards were ripped up or something in the
Oh
years
yeah,
following.
100%.
um and and it's, and yet it was like one of the, anyway, it's to be like, I think the message is that I would like to spread is, don't be prejudiced in any way in life, especially about the grape variety. But then we won't end up with, Merlot hating, Pinot drinking, whatever, out of whack. But sorry, you were mid tangent about
Well,
Pinot, and
yeah, I don't see how to your point though. It's like I don't see how people have such attachment to one varietal or such disdain for one varietal. It's they just there's so much ways they can be different. Like when someone's like, I only like Pinot Noir, or oh, I always hate Pinot Noir, or something like that. I'm like, what? That doesn't even make sense. Like they just can taste totally different.
yeah,
Like people just don't know what they're talking about.
yep. I mean, this is a big thing for me too. Like, one of the things that I've realized lately is I don't always need to express my opinion about a wine or my preferences about a wine. I can just keep silent, and nobody's really going to care what whether I speak or don't speak, but they might actually care if I speak, and it might be better if I don't speak.
Right.
It's, yeah. And I mean, for me, obviously, like, wine, I'm sure this is for you, it's about exploration. I mean, like, the variety is what's fun. I mean, I can also see a world where there was only one grape, and we like just totally geeked out on how that grape tastes in every different corner of the planet, grown different ways, made in different ways, and you could make a million different wines from the same grape. But then you add in, like, a couple hundred different grape varieties, and the possibilities are limitless. Like, there are worlds
Right.
of wine to explore, and and lands to taste through the lens of wine. um
Yeah.
what other wine drinking habits do you have? Can you give us any tidbits from being on the inside of this industry? What do we need to know to uh to seem smart when we come into your shop?
I just I think the best customer is a customer with an open mind,
Yeah.
who trusts in the som or whoever is selling them wine. So someone who's just like gives a little bit of direction. Like I always start with some basic questions. I'm like, oh, can I help you with finding something today? And yeah, that'd be great. And I'm like, hey, looking for red, white, rosé, whatever. Then I always lead it and like, okay, you want something fuller bodied, lighter bodied, things like that. And then I just kind of narrow it down from there. But it's when people come in with the like, I want uh, a a big bold Pinot Noir, that's
I
not
mean,
sweet, but uh, you know, with all these other qualifiers, it's like just don't try to do too much. Like it's okay that you don't know. Like that. That's really it. Like it's okay to not know. It's okay to trust in someone else who knows more than you. Like if I was going to a mechanic, I wouldn't. I don't know what a carburetor is. Like I'm not gonna try to like outgame the person that's helping me. uh so that's if I could say anything, it's to have a little faith in the people you're shopping from.
I love that. And I
I
asked
mean,
that
you
kind of,
have to go to the right shop though, because I guess maybe people have bad experiences, but my shop is pretty good.
um Well, look, are there any closing words or things that you would suggest for people who want to come in and experience Esters or learn more about you in any other way?
I definitely recommend people who live in LA to come to Esters. It's a
I
really
would
fun
too.
and relaxed place. Everyone on our staff is really knowledgeable and unpretentious. We really try to make you feel at home and feel unintimidated by our selection, and that there is really a bottle for everyone on our shelves. Um,
Anything really good that it might be also a really good value right now in the shop?
just random wines, anything.
Well, in Burgundy, let's say Burgundy could be. I
Stay
mean, I
in
guess,
Burgundy.
yeah.
Simone B's always, always, always. You can get
Okay.
great stuff from B's without having to spend a ton of money. Bachelet, who I mentioned earlier too. Gerard Meunier, uh, Michel Lafarge, Arlo. I mean, there's just so many. The nice thing is, like, you can find them at different, like, it's like if you're willing to go above a threshold, and this is why I drink less. I just drink less and drink more better
Quality.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have less bottles per month, and the bottles that I drink are just nicer. But if you're like willing to spend over, and get like a bottle that's over $100, I mean, you can get a really solid Burgundy, and then just don't drink like 5 bottles of $20 wine.
Yeah. Really good point.
That's just how I kind of game it out in my head. So, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll have like a little workers co-op vineyard and something like that.
I think there's a lot we can still do in LA. I mean, if we can convince some people to convert lawns to vineyards, we could have little like neighborhood AVAs or like cooperatives, wine cooperatives, share
What
equipment.
varietals do you think would do really well in LA?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, man, you were talking about like, I mean, just the way that your life has gone. I go down these rabbit holes, and where I am, I don't ever see myself planting anything that doesn't have some native genetics in it at this point in life, because what I want to represent is something that's true to place, and also I want something that grows well without and has super strong genetics that are adapted to
Yeah,
the place, so you don't
without
have to give it.
manipulating it a ton.
Yeah, you don't need chemical crutches. Even organic sprays. I mean, LA, like yeah, I think LA is one of the worst places for powdery mildew because it's a warm maritime climate.
Hmm.
And so our front yard vineyard, we're spraying something almost year round. And so I'm like, I start with stylet oil, I move to sulfur, and now I'm moving to cinerate, which is a cinnamon oil based mildew, mildicide. Not mildicide because organics aren't cidal, but they're mildew prohibitor or whatever, mildew disruptor. Um, and then after harvest, I start doing compost teas in the winter because there's still or in the late fall because like we never go dormant. The vines just keep growing into December. You have to like prune and strip leaves to get it to sort of shut down in December, and so you got all this potential for mildew almost year round, really.
Right.
So again, all that to answer the question of what would I grow, and it would have some kind of adapted things. Like I would love to go. I don't know. I mean, I don't think we've developed the grapes that I would like to grow, but what we have now are some great hybrids. I think. Um, I looked at somebody like Matt Neese, who's growing up in the Sonoma area, growing hybrids and really doing a lot of great work with natives and hybrids. And he has a list of stuff based on climate, and he's like a great resource for stuff like that. And that's probably who I'd turn to. I'd go to him and be like, "Hey, man, I'm gonna plant. What do you suggest?" I'd probably do a variety of things. And see what does well, and then start doing masal selections and just keep developing a local variety basically. I mean, end of the day, like I'd look to have something, like I think the goal probably would be something along the lines of, you know, like what happened in Burgundy over thousands of years, where you find, you know, the native grape that and just keep selecting it for better and better genetics and quality, and
Yeah,
I mean, and you know, resistance to all the natural things that are happening there, drought and pests and whatever, and ultimately have like a thing that just thrives because it's meant to be here, you know.
yeah,
And that, I mean, of course that won't happen in my lifetime, but yeah, I'd want to start that process, I guess, whatever that grape would be or those grapes would be.
yeah.
Do you want to do you have any social media or anything you want to promote?
I have no social media. I'm a ghost.
Awesome.
My only
Well,
social media account is the All Trails app
oh,
for
nice.
hiking.
That's awesome. That's
So I do
awesome.
use the All Trails app. You can probably find me on there complaining about mislabeled trailheads. Um, that's pretty much it.
Oh, that was you.
Yeah, that was me.
Zaytuna, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. This is a lot of fun just
Hey,
to
my
pick
pleasure.
your brain.
Anytime.
And I do hope people come in and see you and get the pleasure of your sommelier service at Esters sometime soon. I certainly want to, and I hope to see you, you know, and share some wine with you soon.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to come down and visit you guys soon.
Awesome.